And our industry helps enhance the entertainment experience, and it makes us a smaller world. Technology allows us to connect to each other across borders of time and space. And I think, as you'll see across the show floor, we're in the midst of a critical transition period in the history of consumer technology. The Internet of Things promises anytime, anywhere access and seamless experience that consumers today want and need. Emerging tech categories like virtual reality, voice-controlled virtual assistants, AI, and drones are pushing our industry forward.
En este momento está hablando el jefe de comunicaciones de la Consumer Electronic Association. En minutos de Gary Shapiro, presidente y CEO de la Consumer Technology Association, los organizadores del CES, la feria de tecnología más importante del mundo.
Seven product categories account for over 81% of global consumer technology spending. Smartphones comprise nearly half of global consumer tech spending, 47%. Mobile PCs, tablets, televisions, desktop PCs, digital cameras, and smartwatches are really driving our industry. Wearables, trackers, smartwatches, etc., revenues will top $21 billion US in 2017. That's a 41% increase over last year. And one of my favorite products, 4K ultra-high definition televisions, sales rose from 52.7 million units, global sales, from 52.7 million units in 2016. That's a 70% gain over the previous year. As you've probably heard this week, we're celebrating our great anniversary, 50 years of CES. And over those 50 years, we've been the launch pad for the new innovations that have changed the world that we're carrying today. The first CES occurred in 1967 in New York City and featured 117 exhibitors and hosted 17,500 attendees. So today, we have over 160,000 attendees and thousands of exhibitors from 117 and 17,000 exhibitors in 67. Almost every breakthrough product in our industry has been introduced here over the years, from the VCR, the DVD player, high-definition television, 4K ultra-high-definition television, high-res audio, tablets, 3D printing, all introduced here. In fact, we estimate that more than 700,000 products have launched at CES in our 50-year history, 700,000 products. As I noted, this is a record show for us, the largest in history. That 2.6 million net square feet, that's about 240,000 net square meters, is the equivalent to 30 football fields. 30 football fields. It's our largest floor in history. Our 3,800 exhibitors are covering 24 product categories, and we have 20 marketplaces. Many of the categories that are setting market trends at CES 2016 that set the trends are back this year and are bigger than ever. Wearables, gaming and virtual reality, smart home, and our drones marketplace have all expanded by at least 30%, which really also shows the great growth that they're having in the marketplace and consumer adoption. Now, there are a lot of themes when I go back home, my friends, as many of yours may do, ask me, well, what did you see? What are the themes? What are the things that we can look for in the coming year? And one of the themes that you'll see here this week is connectivity and mobility in the wireless space. From smart homes and smartphones, self-driving cars, connected smart cities, CES is North America's ultimate show for connectivity and mobility. 5G technology means anywhere, anytime connectivity on the go and in the home. So we have several conference tracks at CES 2017 that are looking at this. They're covering the full spectrum of technology, from self-driving cars, smart cities, to digital health and 5G. This morning you may have heard from Qualcomm as they discussed the revolutionary effect of 5G. They introduced the Qualcomm Snapdragon 835. This is the first 10 nanometer mobile processor that can deliver extended battery life, built-in security, eye-based authentication, and secure audio on-device machine learning and immersive experiences. And one of the great things about the show is that we don't just see the finished products, but we see those underlying products, those enabling products that create the next great breakthrough. And the Snapdragon is one of those that will drive the next great wave of innovation. The new Bluetooth 5 standard has been officially adopted, which provides 5 times the speed and 4 times the range. And we're seeing those first Bluetooth 5.0 devices announced here at CES this week. Again, great underlying technology. Another theme is transportation revolution. Vehicle tech is making cars safer and drivers more connected. In the United States, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, which is the government agency that oversees transportation, expects more than 35,000 people in the U.S. will die on roads in 2016, and hundreds of thousands of more will be injured. They estimate that 90% of those crashes, those accidents, are caused by human error. Self-driving vehicles hold the promise to dramatically reduce those fatalities, saving tens of thousands of lives each year. This year at CES, vehicle technology will span more than 200,000 net square feet with 138 exhibitors, which is up from 121 exhibitors last year. Again, great growth in the marketplace. Another theme is robotics and artificial intelligence. CES this week will have the latest in intelligent, autonomous robot machines that are changing our lives. Robotics are disrupting markets from business, healthcare, security in the home. In 2017, we estimate that home robots will sell 1.2 million units and earn $318 million in U.S. in revenue in the United States alone. They're connected to the cloud. They're capable of seeing, hearing, and reacting to the environment, making our lives more connected and adding more personalization. And we continue to be the place where we see the adoption and these new evolving technology. We have new marketplaces, Sleep Tech Marketplace, the Smart Energy and Solar Technologies Marketplace, even beauty and baby tech. We have the Formula E Visa Vegas E-Race on Saturday, which is amazing. They're going to have a virtual raceway of the Las Vegas Strip. We have an expanded demo for self-driving. And we have 850 new exhibitors. Amazon Alexa, part of AI, artificial intelligence, which is a great storyline here. The Baidu Intelligence System. We have Carnival here for the first time to have a major travel company here. Perhaps you heard the keynote yesterday. We have Nissan for the first time. We have Xiaomi, the Apple of China, of course. And our keynote program also features a number of these non-traditional tech companies, which really tells the story of how technology is not just about a single market, a single individual stovepipe industry, but technology really is influencing and driving so many industries across the world. We have Carnival, Under Armour, NVIDIA, Huawei, and Nissan. CES is not just the home of large, major global brands, but it's also become the home of startups. Perhaps you have a chance to go over to Eureka Park in the Sands. We have 60 innovative startups and entrepreneurs from 34 countries. It's a great opportunity for startups to meet with established brands, to meet with potential investors, and develop partnerships and initiatives to accelerate their growth and really help them move through the stages. As I noted, technology now touches every major industry, market, and occupation around the world. And you'll see that here. We had President and CEO Arnold Donald from Carnival unveiled the Ocean Medallion, which is a very cool Internet of Things device. It's the first of its kind wearable that acts as a sort of a personal digital concierge for cruise guests. The medallion allows guests to access the rooms, make onboard purchases, locate family and friends on board, and create a custom profile to maximize the cruise experience and really make it personalized. Representatives of companies from outside the industry will be meeting with tech firms here this week to see how to incorporate the latest products and devices into their businesses of all time. In fact, CES is where business gets done. It's not just about these product introductions, but it's about the networking and the business deals that get done here. Our show saves executives from traveling an estimated 3.4 billion miles for business. That's enough to travel about 36 round trips from around the world. Each attendee has an average of 33 meetings at CES, so it becomes a very efficient, a very effective way to do business. Here this week, representatives from Facebook, Google, and major web companies will be here to talk with advertisers eager to make their online messaging more effective through our C-Space program, which is a place for the content community, the creative community, marketers and advertisers to meet, to understand technology, and share home. One of the great things about the show is that the serendipity. You can walk around and discover new things. But we also want to make sure that if you're focused on a single market, if you're in industry, you can find home, you can find community. So we set up marketplaces, so if you're interested in wearables or drones, it's easy to find them in one place. And in the same way, we created C-Space so that people, executives here from those industries, can meet and connect and transact. Manufacturers are also here to meet with their parts suppliers and software coordinators looking to incorporate their technology into future devices. We have 9 auto manufacturers at CES this year: BMW, Chrysler, Ford, Hyundai, Honda, Mercedes, Nissan, Toyota, and Volkswagen. And their Tier 1 suppliers are here as well. So we really have the full ecosystem, the full chain for automotive. Clarion, Delphi, and Vallejo. Now, I've talked earlier, I mentioned that we are CTA, the Consumer Technology Association, and we're probably best known for producing the CS. But part of what we also do is work to promote innovation in public policy. And CS is an important part of that program. We have government officials and public policy leaders from around the world come here to meet with industry leaders so they can better understand the technology that they're creating policies around. We want them to experience the tech that's the center of today's policy debates. After the 2016 elections here in the U.S., many government officials are here this week to talk about different regulatory issues. This week we'll welcome more than 170 international, federal, state, and local government officials and their staff here. We have Canada's Minister of Innovation, Science and Economic Development. We have Canada's Ontario Minister of Economic Development and Growth. We have the Dutch Minister of Economic Affairs, France's Minister of Economy and Finance, France's Deputy Minister for Innovation and Digital Affairs, and even François Fillon, excuse my French, the Fillon, thank you. And Gary Shapiro, of course, welcome. The previous Prime Minister of France is the current Republican nominee for the 2017 presidential election in France is here this week. Those foreign leaders understand the value of our show. And so this year we're so pleased to welcome ministers from France, the Netherlands, and Mexico. And this is truly a global gathering as represented in the room today. We have 50,000 professionals from over 150 countries outside of the U.S. here this week. 81% of the countries of the world are represented. 1/3 of media here that attend CS, 1/3 of the over 6,000 media here come from outside the U.S. And every major tech company on the planet participates in our show in some way. During Huawei's keynote yesterday, their CEO, Richard Yu, introduced the Mate 9, which is the world's first intelligent smartphone to integrate with Alexa. Xiaomi, again considered the Apple of China, is exhibiting at 2017 for the first time and expected to draw a lot of media attention. Samsung, Amazon, Twitter, a mixture of traditional and non-traditional global powerhouses are all here participating in some way. Some of them have a presence on the floor, some are here doing meetings, but they're all here to learn about technology, to interact, network, and conduct business. Now, many countries are bringing startup delegations in Eureka Park. France, the Netherlands, Hungary, and Italy. A total of 35 countries outside the U.S. will be represented in Eureka Park alone. And each year, we not only welcome the world to CS, but we try to bring CS to the world. Some of you may have participated in our Unveiled event series, where we bring top media, industry analysts, and exhibitors together to network and make connections and get a sense of what will be previewed or seen at CS next year. We've held events in London, Stockholm, Paris, Tel Aviv, Shanghai, Tokyo, Warsaw, and the Czech Republic. Next year, we're going to expand our international footprint even more. We will return to France in the fall for our 5th annual CES Unveiled Paris, which has been a tremendous success. And we'll have a second Unveiled event in another region of Europe. Stay tuned for details on that. We'll also host media events in South America, and we'll return to Shanghai in June for a 3rd edition of CES Asia. CES Asia has become a premier event for consumer technology in China. Our second show in 2016 was record-breaking. It spanned over 36,000 gross square meters and welcomed 439 exhibiting companies from 23 countries. We had over 33,000 attendees from 86 countries and over 1,100 media from 30 countries. For 2017, we're expecting 450 exhibiting companies to come across up to 45,000 gross square meters, more than 30,000 attendees, including consumers, and over 1,000 members of the media. We expect products from 19 categories, including new categories: augmented reality, drones, and virtual reality. CS Asia provides a great platform for global and domestic businesses to grow and reinforce their brands, to be introduced into the Asian market, and for the Asian market to talk to the world. We currently have 178 exhibitors registered for next year, as of December. And the show is designed for products that, again, making the world debut. We produce CS Asia in cooperation with Shanghai Intex, and we hope you can join us there next year. You can find all information on ces.tech. You get information about our upcoming international events and, of course, information about our show. So that's the formal presentation. I think if Gary is prepared to take questions. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak with you. And here's our friend, Gary Shapiro.
So, I want to thank Jeff Joseph, our Senior Vice President, for filling in and speaking. What's really good about that, not only did he present a comprehensive picture, but since he writes this stuff, now he realizes how long it is. Sorry, Al. Are there any questions? I'm happy to answer them. Yeah. Yes, please identify yourself. I don't know if we're using a microphone or not. Are you just yelling? Or no? Yeah. All right. Go ahead.
Thank you, Hiroshi Takahashi from Mexico City, Forbes magazine. 8 years ago, Mr. Shapiro, we were talking about Barack Obama, remember? Well, maybe not because it was 8 years ago.
Obama, that's a very familiar name.
We're talking about Democrats, and you were telling me that maybe that was not good for business 8 years ago. You told me that. Can you give me some color about what you expect with the return of the Republicans with Mr. Trump, and how this will help the American industry of technology and all the ecosystem? Can you give me some color? Thank you.
Great question, and for those that did not hear it, I love when reporters have a good memory. 8 years ago, we talked about President-elect Barack Obama, and I gave my opinion about him and how he would be for business. And now I'm asked, I think, the same question about President-elect Trump. So President Obama was very good for the technology industry. He had a great way of speaking. He had great equanimity and stability, and I respect him greatly. But honestly, from a business perspective, it was record-setting in terms of the number of rules and regulations. It's been choking for business by all accounts. So it's been very difficult. So we, in the innovation industry, are not political. But what we are is, because we're innovators, we change and we adapt. You know, as been said in the history of genetics, it's not the strongest that survive, it's those that adapt the quickest. So we must adapt, and we will adapt to a new administration and a new approach. And the positive side of this new administration will be, we expect an investment in infrastructure, which is overdue. It's been neglected for not only under President Obama, but under prior presidents. You fly into this beautiful Las Vegas airport, but that's one of the very few new airports that we have. It's also an opportune time for investment in infrastructure as we go to 5G, as we need more broadband, as our highways and roads are being dug up. There's an opportunity to make sure that we are more connected technologically, and we are optimistic about that. We're optimistic about lower taxes. We have the highest corporate taxes in the developed world, and President-elect Trump has campaigned on promising to reduce those. We're also optimistic about all the rules and regulations that will be removed, because I think what's happened, and I talked about this in my keynote a little bit yesterday, is that companies in the United States have had to follow so many rules and so many regulations that they have let that define whether they are doing the right thing. And it's been very difficult and very expensive, and we have probably have more lawyers per capita than any country in the world. If any country here would like to have some of those lawyers, we're happy to export them. So we expect there'll be fewer burdensome rules. At the same time, we recognize there is a value in government regulation, and we support government regulation to accomplish narrow, specific objectives. But right now, literally, there's hundreds of thousands of pages of rules issued every year, and no business can follow them. It's just impossible. And we would need a little reason brought back. And I think President-elect Trump, by his cabinet picks, has shown that he's putting in business leaders. We have fewer business leaders under President Obama than any president in the United States history in terms of having positions in government. And President-elect Trump has clearly shifted the other direction very quickly. And I recently read a couple of his books, and I think he's very good at getting things done, at seeing the big picture, at making things happen. He's also very cost-conscious. Although you see the Trump hotels are beautiful and big, he's already shown that in terms of government money, he's going to be more cost-conscious in how he spends it. So there are issues that we will be grappling with. The biggest one probably is what he will do about trade. At CTA, the Consumer Technology Association, we would prefer that he take an approach which is focused on encouraging corporations through the tax laws and through immigration laws and other corporations to do business here rather than discouraging trade. At the same time, I have personally encouraged him to enter a bilateral agreement with, for example, Great Britain to get us back and resuscitate the Pacific, the PTT, Pacific, TPP, Trans-Pacific Partnership. Sorry, because that is a very important strategic approach to dealing with the growing dominance of China, and also to look at ways that the United States government could help big American companies, frankly, which are getting beat up by the European Union. Google and Intel and Microsoft and Facebook and others have, the European Union has been very harsh with those companies. At the same time, the EU has not developed its own high-tech companies. So I think there's a role that the U.S. government can play that's pretty effective, and I've advocated that. If you want to see more about that in writing, just Google my name, and you'll see a whole bunch of articles that have appeared in the last week since the election, and even before the election when I thought Hillary Clinton would win. I was urging her to do the same things. That's just me. Yes.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Antonio Shapiro from Economista in Mexico. Well, with the new president-elect coming, do you see a change in the way there's a relationship with Mexico, especially in the technological sector? There's this year, I think they're not we are not that well represented. Well, media, I think we are, but not as companies. Do you think that there's going to be a shift, or what's your take on the current situation?
Muchas gracias. It's a great question, and obviously Mexico was talked about in the election, and not always in a way that many of us are comfortable with. The value of Mexico as a neighbor to the United States cannot be understated. The United States, I think, is blessed by many things, but one is our geography. We have oceans on either side, and we have two great, wonderful, friendly countries, Canada and Mexico, that surround us. From a standard military point of view, there's no better situation to be in. And so we value, in speaking, I think, on behalf of all business in the United States, we tremendously value our relationship with Mexico. We want to see it strengthened. I think what you can see in a positive way is that since President-elect Trump has promised to relook at NAFTA, I don't think he's going to throw NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, away. I think what he will do is look at to modernize it, to reflect the changes in technology, to reflect cross-border data flows, and to reflect perhaps there could be some push and give on what we expect in terms of human rights on all three countries. I don't honestly know. I mean, he just announced his United States Trade Representative pick this week. But I don't think anyone is interested in stopping and closing the border with Mexico for trade. So I choose to be optimistic. Yes?
During the Trends Conference...
Could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Alan. I'm from Mexico also.
Okay.
Mexican guys in the States. During the Trends Conference, we've been told that we are beginning to live among robots, but it just happened that we don't call them that way. So what are the news in the sector, and what are the prospects? And also in the recent years, CES has become like an automotive showcase, with autonomous vehicle in the center of the stage. Is this going to be the sector in which the revolution of autonomous machine will explode?
So the question is, are we robots, and will automotive continue to expand? There's different ways of viewing it. I think automotive is part of the story of connectivity and the Internet of Things. And we're seeing increasingly connected cars. And the tragedy is around the world that 1 million people lose their lives every year in auto-related deaths, most of which can be avoided in the future. It's just a question of when. So I think that's a very worthy goal to work for, and I think the car companies themselves and governments around the world are trying to work towards that. But it's just not about cars. It's about other transportation. It's about drones. It's about connected cities, which you'll see much more about at the next CES in 2018. Connected cities will be one of the themes. It's about 5G. I just came over from the Qualcomm keynote, and I'd say a good portion of the keynote was giving a vision of 5G and where Qualcomm CEO Steve Mollenkopf sees it going. So it's very important that we go in that direction. But there will be a future, and I said this before to many of you who have been, how many of you have been to this briefing before in prior years? Oh wow, it's a lot of new people, but some returns. It's the, I read a tremendous amount of science fiction growing up, and I'm seeing it played out at CES. And it's also about robotics, it's about 3D printing, it's about all sorts of ways of making our lives better through predictive intelligence and artificial intelligence and virtual reality and augmented reality. As we shift, if you were not in my keynote yesterday, I urge you to get a text copy, which Ali or Jeff can make available. I talk about the challenges that societies will face as we go towards new technology and innovation. But the important thing is that we go towards new innovation and we move towards this and we have an honest discussion about the downsides, because there are downsides. There's an impact on jobs, there's an impact on privacy, and we have to have honest discussions about these issues in a way which can move us forward, because the benefits of innovation are so phenomenal and so great in terms of improving the human condition that we cannot afford to stop as mankind. And that is what I know drives me. It drives a lot of the people that are my colleagues and the staff at CTA. We feel we're doing something better for humankind by creating this event, by producing it, by having you here, and by focusing on innovation. And that's what our goal is, frankly. Yes?
Hi, Gabriela Chavez, also from Mexico.
Oh my gosh!
From CNN Expansión. I would like to know your take on cybersecurity as an issue for the tech industry in the near future. What are the challenges, the particular challenges that you see? And also with the Trump administration coming, with an administration that's going to maybe deregulate some sectors. Do you think that maybe there are some more worries if the regulations come below on this
For cybersecurity or for everything?
No, on cybersecurity.
So cybersecurity is really, I thank you for raising that. That's another very important issue in so many different ways, because there's a balance that we face as we go more connected versus the risk that as we get more connected, then there's potential that bad guys could do things. So cybersecurity will be around as an issue for a long time, because as we get better protections put into our devices, then the bad players will try to advance. Or as we say, to use an analogy which may not translate, if you build a better mousetrap, you get smarter mice. So it'll be a constant acceleration. I think what will happen is that a few different avenues. One, we all have a responsibility. As industry, we have a responsibility to start upgrading what we do and communicating to consumers what level of cybersecurity we have in devices. And that could occur through government action, and it could occur through private standards and even certification. I think as government, I think their role is to do what they can to protect their citizens and balance the access to all this phenomenal cornucopia of benefits versus the risks. I don't think North Korea is the example we want to follow, where they cut off their citizens' access to anything. I prefer the approach of the rest of the world, which is more and more access and more benefit. But I think we also have to educate our consumers that they have to put passwords in, and it cannot be uno, dos, tres, cuatro, cinco, seis, or the word password. It's important that consumers start paying attention to their passwords. Even in our own offices, we try to train our employees not to click on to attachments or links that they do not know. So we all have a role to play. In terms of whether that will hinder growth, I don't think we're going to go back to using paper. The United States Post Office is not going to suddenly hire more people for mail. I think we are going to continue to go in a direction of communicating using technology. I bet neither one of you is from Mexico, so I'm going to go to you right here, please. I love Mexico, by the way.
In China.
Oh,
Do you
Sissy.
the numbers of exemptors from China?
The I can't give you that number off the top, but I can give it to you later. But there's a lot. It's in terms of the area of exhibitors from China. It's not as great as you would think. Most of the exhibitors from China are the very small exhibitors in the Westgate. The really surprise, I think, as Jeff Joseph indicated, is the French are extraordinarily large considering the size of their country. That's probably the most dominant in terms of relative to country size, in terms of space and exhibitors. But China has a very significant presence here.
And what role do they play in CES? And for them, what's the difference between participating in international CES and CES Asia in China in US?
So the CES here is the largest innovation event in the world, the largest business event in the world, probably the largest annual trade show in the world by most measures. And what is different Jeff talked about the show we have in Shanghai, CES Asia, which will enter its third year. It doubled in size. It's already past the present size for next June. What's different is that most of the exhibitors in CES Asia are not exhibiting here. I think it's most, right, Ellie? Yes. So it's a different audience. It's Asia. This is here, but there's we also run CES Asia differently, so we do not open it up to all Chinese companies. Or any companies. You must have a great brand or have innovation. We do not have 30 companies that make cases for smartphones because I don't want to insult any smartphone case maker, but that's not how we define innovation. So yes. Yes, we did. I recall meeting you in Shanghai.
So two questions. First one, can you just give us a simple example? Introduction of CES Asia this time, this year in June. How many new exhibitors from the world will present in Shanghai this time? And any new trend, new topics will be presented?
We will be making announcements about that shortly. We're focusing on right here, right now. On this. But thank you for asking. But the show is, I've just given you something to share, a new fact, and that is that the show is larger already than it was in 2016. The 2017 show will be larger than 2016.
Yes, Jeff has already presented.
Yes, but we work on the same team.
Second question. This time we see Friday Future, which made a overwhelming launch. And also the eco, you welcome the eco for the first time, I think, in GS. So if you can share with us some stories behind the cooperation with the eco and Friday Future.
I have no stories to share. I visited I don't think I have any stories to share, actually. I visited with Faraday Future in California, and I was very impressed walking around their offices. They have hundreds and hundreds of engineers working, and they're very diligent planning a car. I know they've gotten a lot of their senior people who came from Tesla. So that's about all I can share. I think you have to talk to them directly.
Okay, so I have one question, if I may.
Go ahead. You're on a roll. I haven't answered one of your questions yet, so maybe this will be the lucky question.
Big companies and also investors come here to look for opportunities for cooperation. So would you please give us some examples and successful stories with the cooperation between startups and investors?
Well, that's an interesting question. So one of the things that the CES started out as a show in 1967 for manufacturers and retailers. And it's evolved dramatically into a show really where it's media, hugely important, investors, as you mentioned, partners, strategic partners. And the strategic partners have increasingly changed, so it's just not investors. It's also big companies investing in little companies. And what we have is, at Eureka Park, for example, which if you haven't seen, I urge you to see, is you have many stories that come out of Eureka Park where small companies all of a sudden get their first order from a large company like Alibaba or Walmart. Or you see Mark Cuban has walked around and made investments. or you see Oculus, which was a tiny little company here. Was it 2 years ago? 3 years ago? And right after the CES, they were bought for a few $1 billion by Facebook. So the story, we have hundreds of stories, big and small. You could see a company like Canon, a big company, which its entire staff goes and comes to Eureka Park to meet small companies and as a potential partner, potential investment. The toughest thing for a small company is to get that first customer or to raise money and get some advice. So the trend that we're seeing really for the first time now is big companies are looking at small companies not as a nuisance or someone to be ignored. They're looking at as potential partners that could provide innovation. Because I think companies have learned that innovation can come from anywhere. So the entire show, in part, is based on nurturing small companies. But we do see these big, beautiful companies and wonderful exhibits, and they're very exciting. But there's a lot of small companies. And a lot of those big companies started here as a small company. And talking to Bill Gates of Microsoft, when he was in Microsoft, he would say to me, we started out and did very well because of CES and Comdex, and trade shows are extremely important to us. Nowhere else can you have, for a very small investment as a company, you could start out and literally meet thousands of people over 4 days that'll give you advice, maybe become your partner. You cover small companies. I saw, Jeff, I think you sent me an email today about a small company that was so happy in Eureka Park. They said we had no idea in one day that we could get such media exposure and meet so many people who want to help us and invest in us. And I would just urge you, if you're interested in following up, to talk to any of the companies themselves, and they will tell you about their experience. Any company here. There's almost 4,000 companies here, and we do surveys after the show, and the satisfaction rate is extraordinarily high. It's in the 90s in terms of their value for their investment of time and money, because it is a big investment. You've all made an investment to come here. You've flown here. It's costly, and that's important. Is there a question back there? You're scratching your head. You're scratching your head. No, it's okay. Yes, Professor.
My name is Waiji Sekiguchi from Nikkei, Japan, and I would like to ask you more about the questions regarding the new administration. So you talked about the relation with Europe and also but I wonder what kind of impact will it brought us to the trade between U.S. and Asia, particularly with China and Japan and Korea?
Well, I don't speak on behalf of the Trump administration, honestly. I speak only on behalf of the Consumer Technology Association as a collection of over 2,000 technology companies. And it's more, at this point, in hopeful terms. I think the relationship, the historic relationship we have with Japan is very strong, and there's no question that Mr. Trump, President-elect Trump, would recognize that. And I think whereas 25 or 30 years ago, Japan was considered a threat, and American students were learning Japanese, that has dissipated a little bit, and I think Japan is viewed, again, as a very strong ally, both strategically, culturally, with common goals. And I think there's so many points of relationship. I do not view that. China is definitely a different story, and I think that there's a healthy relationship will evolve, and it will take time because China is so important, and China is so big, and the trade is so great that we will have to work through any discussions or differences. But one of the areas that President-elect Trump could choose to focus on with China is the issue of parity. Chinese companies are free to invest and buy companies here. Chinese citizens have been incredible in buying up real estate here, but an American citizen cannot go to China and buy real estate easily or start a company. We as Americans must have a Chinese partner. And Mr. Trump could choose to go to the principle of parity in redefining the relationship between China and the United States. That is not something that I personally know he will do. I would guess at this point they're still working out on what they will do. I said they have a broad choice. There is strong power invested in the United States president to put up trade barriers in certain situations. and he's already talked about a border tax. He's talked about up to a 40% tariff on imports. That is not the positions that we will advocate for and ask him to do. We will ask that he not take that approach and that he consider other approaches ranging from parity to building up the incentives for companies, U.S. and otherwise, to do business here. He may choose, but we do not know what he will choose to focus on. And there's also the Congress, and the Congress, the United States Congress, is a little more free trade oriented, especially in the United States Senate, than the rhetoric of the campaign. And sometimes there is a difference between running for office and rhetoric and governing. And that transition will certainly occur at some point.
So what kind of policies are you going to propose to the new administration as one of the largest industry organizations in the United States on top of that?
I'm sorry.
What kind of policies are you going to propose?
What policies are we going to put? What I was suggesting is that we will actively seek to discourage the sudden use of tariffs and border taxes, and we will encourage the use of lower tax rates in the United States, reduction of unnecessary rules, and other more positive ways of dealing. And we will continue to encourage the resurrection of the Trans-Pacific Partnership because we believe it's very important. I think there's opportunities for President-elect Trump to go in and redefine the Trans-Pacific Partnership a little bit, redefine NAFTA, and enter bilateral relationships. The most obvious one would be with Great Britain, but there are other bilateral relationships. And I think you'll see in this next administration more focus on bilateral relationships and agreements rather than multilateral. But this is the opinion of Gary Shapiro, and I don't know, my predictive powers lately of my crystal ball has been very foggy. So, yes?
Hello, my name is Tamara. I interviewed you in Panama.
Yes, I remember.
I would like to know what's your opinion on how can we, in Latin countries, how do you see the adoption of 5G and all these amazing technologies that we see here in our Latin countries where we face many challenges in terms of politics, economic, and also education sometimes. And what would you recommend to our governments and the private sector to go forward in this adoption and seeking through technology our development?
So the question came from Panama and about Latin American countries and what recommendation I would give for governments, especially with the oncoming 5G. One of the advantages of 5G technology is that as opposed to the development of the original telephone, which required landlines and huge investment, it's essentially you could build it without wired connection. And I think that's very important. So as investments go forward, to a certain extent, the developing world and second and third world nations could leapfrog, which I think is positive. So the investments going forward, so there's a real benefit there. So you can almost get to broadband quicker. I will say, having been in Panama recently, that Panama is a very economically healthy and quickly growing country. It has a lot of benefits. My advice to government is to determine your national strategy and what you're focusing on. I've written a couple of books about innovation, and I think also they're aimed at government. And the message is figure out where you want to go, your strengths and weaknesses, and develop a strategy to get there. You know, I maybe it's because I spent a lot of time with French officials in the last 48 hours, but France has a strategy. It's very clear, and it's not one party or the other. It's multiple parties. They all agree that they want to invest in innovation. And the way they're doing it is not only financially, which doesn't have to be large. They're doing it through government senior level activity. So if a minister or the head of state of a country comes to CES or another trade show, you're setting a major statement to that trade show, to the press that's there, to the country, the reporters that are covering you. A lot of leadership is symbolic. It's the bully pulpit. It's setting a goal. It's determining a strategy. Actually, if you look at what President-elect Trump has done, he's not in office yet, but he's already clearly changed how business is done in the United States simply by being elected and giving an opinion. And it's not, I think, out of fear that companies are reacting, but I think they're reacting in part to the election where they realize that there are Americans throughout. It's just not those in major cities that are better off that are important, but all citizens are important. And I think that's been a very positive impact of the election. So in terms of other governments, we've had leaders from other countries come, and when they do, they come to CES. They position their country as very forward-looking, focused on innovation and technology. The other thing, and many countries have done this, is there's accelerators and startups. There's mentoring programs. Again, not all these things cost a lot of money. Obviously, if you have a strategy where you want to teach kids programming skills, that's very helpful. If you want to focus on science and technology, or if you want to focus on the latest technology involving agriculture, it's very helpful. But really, a lot of it comes down to your education strategy to start with, and where you choose to put your precious investment dollars. Oh, we have so many questions. I have 5 minutes left, so I will take 3 questions, and you have to. He's waiting patiently, and I'll take you, sir, then I'll take you. I'm sorry, I'll take you afterwards if I have to.
My name is Kazuo Tsubakiyama from Japan.
He'll use me.
Okay. Is this a phone-in question? Oh, it's in translator.
No, it's not through the telephone. I have a question about autonomous driving.
Okay.
はい、自動運転がスムーズに世の中に受け入れるためには何が必要になってくるか。
What would be necessary for autonomous driving to be smoothly accepted into society?
So we call that self-driving cars, and what will it be necessary to be accepted? At my keynote yesterday, I showed a video clip of a person's life being saved by Tesla I think it was in Germany. And I think when people see the benefits that lives will be saved, that's more important than anything is human life. So that's the number one benefit. In the United States, every year, 35,000 people die, 1 million worldwide. So that's the number one. We have done research of American citizens. Americans like the idea that they will pay less for auto insurance and have fewer accidents. They like the idea that driverless cars will avoid problems with drunk drivers or aggressive drivers. So those benefits will be gradual. There is always, with new technology, a push saying, oh, I don't want to change, I always want to drive. That occurred in the over a century ago when people said they would not give up their horses. And if you asked them what kind of better transportation they would want, they would say they want a faster horse that eats less. So I don't think asking consumers questions is that helpful, because they will want driverless cars when they experience the benefits. Yes?
Vincent Wright for Automotive Industries UK London, and good to see you again. It's been a while. Mr. Joseph. The overarching theme seems to be personalization. The overarching theme of the show seems to be personalization of technology. And my discussion with leadership seems to be the next leap in the digital transformation, industrial revolution, I should say. So my question to you is mass personalization of technology the next step in innovation? That's my first question. My second question to you, Mr. Shapiro, is 50 years of CES, and what would you say is your most overarching achievement in terms of your leadership?
Wow. So I'll answer the easier question about personalization. You know, I understand that, first of all, thank you for coming. I had a wonderful 40 minutes last night with your minister, who he and I have been going back and forth on BBC. And I tried to explain that it was the prior minister that I was being quoted about, not about him, where I said that Britain does not support the CES. Anyway, I know that journalists like to say that what's the theme of CES, and I always struggle with that answer, and I've never had a good answer because there's never one theme. You know, I've heard that the theme of this show is artificial intelligence. I heard that it's connectivity. Now I've heard it's personalization. I've heard that it's automobiles. I've heard that it's drones. I guess, you know, what the animal looks like depends upon what part of the animal you touch, I guess. So to me, the overall theme of CES is really about innovation and technology. And there's, with almost 4,000 exhibitors showing an incredible array of different life-changing technologies, it's about the future. That's the theme to me. But you are right in that one of the trends is clearly personalization. It'll be personalization of education, personalization of healthcare, even personalization of driving. I expect in the next few years we'll have flying driverless cars. We'll have all sorts of things. So personalization is important. And we're seeing it, but that's a healthy trend, and a lot of this will be because the processing speeds on computers, the low-cost sensing devices, the ability of entrepreneurs to come up with new services and algorithms, the predictive intelligence, the deep data analysis, it's all happening very, very quickly, and we're seeing advances much quicker probably than we anticipated, and that's why I love CES, but it is only once a year. Here, there's one in Asia, obviously, and we have a wonderful event in Paris as well. But the truth is that companies are developing things so quickly that there's an endless supply of news about technology, and it's increasing in speed. So I think that's the good news. And definitely personalization is a trend. I had one more question. I think it was you.
It was me.
It was you?
It was me.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm from Brazil. I need to make a question.
Obrigado.
I'm Victor from whitefarm.com in Brazil. During your yesterday keynote, you said we cannot fear the changes. In your opinion, who's more afraid the changes that are coming? The industry guys or the consumer? Who's more afraid of the changes?
Who's more afraid?
Yeah, I'm asking you that because I've been talking to many industry guys in Brazil and CIOs as well, and all of them are concerned about the future of their companies and their products. And on the customer side, the concern is about their job. We just had an example in Japan that AI is replacing some jobs. So in your opinion, who's more afraid about the change? Are industry guys or consumers?
That's a great question. First, thank you for coming from Brazil. Obrigado. My daughter-in-law is from Brazil. We had our first Brazilian keynoter. Did you know that?
Yeah.
Carlos Ghosn. And we were talking about Brazil backstage. It's a beautiful country. The question is about who's more fearful, business or consumers. And I think the natural part of the human condition is to be uncomfortable with change, but yet change defines our very life from the day we're born. You know, we have a life cycle, and the loved ones change, and that's just life. If you compare our living conditions today compared to our ancestors from 500 or 1,000 years ago, we have it really good. You know, they just struggle to survive. And now we're concerned about things like whether we can afford a car or whether we can even afford a phone for many people. And I think we're continue to advance. But the fact is, we're living longer lives, we're living healthier lives, and that trend should continue. But it is jarring, it is a problem, and we are focusing on those issues of change. It's not only about your job, it's about your privacy, it's about your cybersecurity, as we discussed. There are many issues that we have to discuss, and I think it's our job in industry to discuss those openly in a way where we don't bury the problem or even diminish its importance. That's why we're having a conference focused on the future of work. You know, the development of the sharing economy with Uber and Lyft and Airbnb and their counterparts around the world. That's been disruptive for the hotel industry. It's been disruptive for taxi cab drivers, but it's created all sorts of benefits for employment for others that don't want they want to work whenever they want to work, or they want to share their home and meet new people. Actually, I've met more Uber drivers who just want to meet people and they're retired. So, yes, people are uncomfortable. And I think it's incumbent upon us as parents and as business leaders and others to make sure people understand that being uncomfortable is natural. And jobs are lost. There's fewer people building saddles than there used to be. There's fewer bank tellers than there used to be. I used to say there's fewer travel agents than there used to be, but I was corrected because apparently travel agents have had a resurgence the way phonographic records have had a resurgence. But jobs will come and go, and the question we must ask is, what is the job of business and what is the job of government? Do you retrain workers? Do you shift your educational system for the jobs of tomorrow? Do you focus on, we have a shortage of, we have, in the United States, which is, I guess what I know about more than any other country, is in the United States we have the same number of people working we had 8 years ago, although our population is vastly expanded. So we actually have fewer full-time jobs. Or even actually, there were fewer full-time jobs than there were 8 years ago. We have more part-time jobs. That's an issue. Yet we have, I think, 5 million jobs that are open in the United States because the skilled people we need for them are not being trained by our colleges. Our colleges are producing people with degrees that no one wants to hire them. So there's a disconnect there. I know you come from the university environment, so you recognize that's probably not a problem unique to the United States. So our political leaders and our business leaders have to advocate for change. And our citizens, what I have seen overall, while there are some concerns sometimes expressed with a rapid pace of innovation and technology, citizens and consumers are delighted with their smartphones and with their tablets and with their televisions and with their shared economy services. I travel around the world and use the equivalents of Uber around the world, and everyone loves it. It's a new, better service. And the other thing that's happening is you talk about who's uncomfortable. We are, in the United States, a very capitalist, competitive system. And competition is not something that is fun, but it makes us all better. Whether when we start out competing as kids in races or businesses competing with each other, it makes us better. But it doesn't mean we love it. So I want to thank you all for coming. Our time has elapsed, and my voice is eroding. Thank you.
Bueno, terminamos la transmisión de la conferencia de prensa de Mr. Gary Shapiro, el presidente y CEO de la Consumer Technology Association. Representa más de 2,000 empresas de tecnología que cada año se reúnen aquí en Las Vegas para hacer posible la feria de tecnología más importante del mundo. Seguiremos transmitiendo desde CES de Las Vegas 2017, que cumple 50 años. Hasta pronto. Yeah.